Hi there. Welcome to the Schwowin's Nest. My name is Sandra, and I'm so glad you're here. If you like thrift store flips, trash to treasure, farmhouse decor, and all things DIY, make sure you hit that red button and stick around a while. Today's projects are inspired by some of the paper mache items that I am seeing on high end websites. Paper mache is fun, it's easy to do, and it's so inexpensive. And the decor that you can create looks so gorgeous. I remember making paper mache models and bowls and all sorts of things in grade school, and I thought I would try some of these. I've been wanting to do them for a while. And the other day, I was talking to my best friend Sonja over at DIYs with Sonja, and she mentioned that she was going to be doing some paper mache projects. So we decided to collaborate together. I'll give you more information about Sonja and her projects in a little bit. What I'm doing here is I'm using this box as my mold, and I'm taking some wax paper and taping it up all the way around, just like I would be wrapping up a present. I want to make sure that I get all of the folds nice and crisp and make sure that the painter's tape is really attached well. I'm just going to use the flour and water paste method. I did throw a little bit of salt down at the bottom of the bowl. I read online that that might help it from molding. I'm going to add a little bit of water and then use a whisk to just mix it together. And you want it sort of the consistency of pancake batter, not too thick, but not too thin either. I grabbed a 4-pack of toilet paper from the Dollar Tree the last time I was there because I was not going to use the expensive kind. What I did here was just tear all the pages, and now I'm going to tear the pieces in half. But you'll see later on that I don't even bother tearing the pieces in half. You don't need to. You can definitely work with the larger sheets too. I decided to use this chip brush because they're really soft and they don't have a lot of bristles to them. I was hoping wouldn't do too much damage to the toilet paper. And you can see here, I'm just going to overlap them a little bit and just place them down. I would have been fine just to grab one sheet of the toilet paper and place it on the box. And now I'm going to just give another coat of the paste on top. You want to be gentle with the toilet paper because it will tear once it gets wet. It's very fragile, but I really love the texture of it and how it turned out. I had toilet paper and it had butterflies on it. And then I was looking at it thinking, gosh, I hope the butterflies don't show up. But they don't. Any of the patterns that are on there simply disappear, and you end up with more of a brush stroke look rather than the pattern that is on the toilet paper. I think I did about 7 or 8 layers of the toilet paper. I started going up the sides just a couple of inches because that's the size of the box I wanted, and I'm gonna just continue the steps over and over and over again until it looks like I have the same type of thickness on each side. And then it's a waiting game. You just have to set your project aside and hope it dries. This one took about 2.5, almost 3 days to dry just at room temperature. But if you wanted to, and it depending on the mold that you're using with this box, I didn't want to chance it. You could put it in the oven for maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe even a half an hour at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and that will just help to speed up the drying process. After it was completely dry to the touch, I decided to try and attempt to take it off the box. And I have to say that the wax paper was a great idea to do this because it just lifted off super easy, especially with the painter's tape as well. Now, in a couple of spots, I ended up gluing the toilet paper right to the box. There's a spot right here where you can see I just have to very gently pull that up, and then I'll be able to just wriggle it off the box. Just be careful with it, and if you need to cut anything, use a nice craft knife and make sure it's really good and sharp, and you'll be able to just very gently peel everything away. After I got it off, I very gently peeled off some of the tape and pulled the wax paper out very gently. The inside was still a little bit wet, so I ended up letting it dry for another day or so, and then it was really super hard. To embellish this box, I decided to add a little bit of this thicker twine. I'm just going to make a random design all around it, and then I'll align the very top edge and the bottom edge with the twine too. I love how this one turned out. I decided to just leave it the color that it had dried. So there is no paint on this one. It has a really beautiful mottled look to it. The texture is absolutely gorgeous. And for the final touch, I ended up putting some of the wired jute rope that you can get from the Dollar Tree. And I created two little round handles on the top and filled it with some succulents. This is such a cute project, and I hope you'll try it yourself. So let me tell you a little bit about my best friend Sonja. Her channel is called DIYs with Sonja, and she is my inspiration. She's the one who got me started doing YouTube. She convinced me that my crafts were good enough to share with all of you, and I'm so very thankful for her. So make sure you head down to my description box and click on the link to her channel and video. For this project, I decided to try and make that little vase that I showed you in the beginning. I used a small little balloon from a pack at the Dollar Tree and this round wooden disc. I'm going to tape the two pieces together and I'm going to leave the tape on. The wooden disc is going to stay on because that's going to give me a nice flat, solid bottom for the vase to stand properly. To make the cylindrical, taller part of the vase, I'm using this plastic cup and I'm just using my craft knife to take the bottom of the cup off, which will then become the top of the vase. I'm going to use some painter's tape again, and I'm going to just tape that cup right on top of the balloon. I'm going to start at the bottom this time because there's a hole in the top, so I'll be able to prop this on something and let it dry. Now, I started using this sponge brush, but it really started to tear the paper. So I had to move to something a little bit softer, and I just wanted to be able to use a smaller brush. The original chip brush that I was using just was too big for this project. This smaller paintbrush worked really well, but you can see how slow I'm going here. I just want to make sure that I don't tear anything, especially in that area where the transition is from the wood slice to the balloon. And here I'm using regular pieces of toilet paper again. You might be able to see that little butterfly design, but it doesn't show. So I'm going to continue to just add a whole bunch of layers to this little vase. The only thing that I'm going to need to do for this one is to literally just pop the balloon inside. And if you wanted to add some florals or different things, you could actually just leave the balloon blown up because then it would just give you a little bit of extra support. For this one, I decided to do one coat of white chalk paint. I'm just going on the inside a little bit in case you see anything. There's a little marking on the plastic cup still. And then I'm going to give it one coat on the outside. I really love the color of these, but I wanted to do something a little different. And I love white projects. So I thought, what better way to see how this is going to turn out with a pure white finish? And I really love the texture that shows up. This technique is something that I learned from Sonia, and it's just taking some regular old dirt from the garden or from your pots, whatever you've got, and just throwing a little bit on and then just rubbing it in a little bit, tapping off the excess. This gives it a really aged and grungy look, and I love how this one turned out. I think I'm going to be using this dirt technique a little more often on some of my projects. I created this beautiful flower stem. It had some of the little white flowers on it, but no greenery. So I added the greens, and now I'm going to just use hot glue and poke it into a piece of styrofoam that I glued into the vase. I'm also going to be adding some sticks and some curly willow and a little bit of reindeer moss to cover up that green styrofoam. I really love how this one turned out. You'll have to let me know what you think. I wanted to make something that looked a little bit like a bread bowl, and I wasn't sure how to achieve this, but then I decided to try and make a shape out of these two cardboard rolls. I'm using some duct tape and I'm going to tape them together and make the bottom a totally flat surface. Then I added some duct tape to the end of the cylinders just to cover up the holes and make that a flat surface too. Once I was done with this, I started wrapping it with the wax paper again, but then I decided that it really wasn't as long as I wanted it to be. So I ended up cutting down another piece of cardboard tube and laying it across the end and then taping that together too. I've got quite a bit of water in this bowl, and it's always better to have more water than not enough. This is, I think, probably about 3/4 of a roll of toilet paper, and I totally pulled it apart just to make it easier to rip when it was in the water. And as I said, the more water you have, the better, because then it will just fall apart really easily. I actually just stuck my hand in it and just swished my hand around, and everything just started disintegrating. I've got another container on standby here. And what I'm going to do is literally just take little handfuls of the toilet paper and squeeze out as much of the excess water as I can. The more you can squeeze out, the better it will be. Now it's time to make the flour and water paste mixture. It is better to have less water and more flour to make a thicker consistency paste this time. What we're doing is making some paper mache clay. And the less water you have in it, the better it will be in the long run. The thickness should be about the consistency of cake batter. If you do any type of baking, you'll know that it's better to add little bits of a dry ingredient to a wet ingredient rather than dumping the whole thing in. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting some of the chunks in here. Now, I should have broken up these chunks a little bit more, but it's really hard for my fingers to do that. So I decided just to start chopping here with the spoon. And then I got a fantastic idea. I ran upstairs to my kitchen and I got my little hamburger chopper thingy that I use when I'm doing some ground beef in the frying pan. And this worked perfectly. I was able to just keep adding the toilet paper, the squished out stuff, and it worked out really well. You can see that I'm getting a really good consistency and it's helping me break up all of these larger pieces really well. Then I grabbed a hunk and tested the consistency of it, and it felt a little bit wet still, but I was okay with the texture. Held together really well, and I was able to smooth it out too. Now I'm going to start applying it to my form. I'm starting with the bottom section because, of course, I'm not going to have a top for this. This is going to be the bottom of my dough bowl. And it's just like working with regular clay. you're going to take small pieces and just work them together, push them onto the wax paper, onto the form, and try and get it as even as possible. There's going to be a lot of bumps, a lot of texture, but this was so much fun and it was really relaxing too. I had a great time. When I started doing the sides, I needed to lift it up a little bit off the table. So I just grabbed this scrap 2x4, and that really helped because then I was just able to push the clay down and not have the table interfering with what I was doing. You can see here that I'm very carefully trying to just lift it up and make sure that I don't make it too long on the sides. Tapping it in, squishing it together. Now it's time to very carefully remove the mold portion, all these cardboard tubes, out of my dough bowl. Now I did take this to the oven and I put it in at about 225 degrees for a good half hour, almost 40 minutes. Then I turned the oven off and I just let the oven cool down. The outside is really nice and crisp and hard, but after I took the cardboard out, the inside is still a little soft. So I think it's still going to take a few more days for this to dry and harden completely. So I'm taking my box cutter and just cutting out little pieces of the cardboard. Again, really careful. What I ended up doing on these sides, and I didn't even realize, is that I had pushed some of the clay in the tube. So it was a little tricky to get out. You're going to see me take my box cutter in a second and just cut out some of the clay that is extra on the sides, which is kind of deterring me from being able to pull this out nicely. Once I got that first piece out, the rest of it was fairly easy to pull. All I did was grab it by the very end there. Once I started cutting here, I noticed, hey, this is kind of moving a little bit. So again, very gently, just kind of pulled it out and then stretched it a little bit and got everything out. I love how this turned out. I love the look of it, the texture, the different colors. You can see that some of the toilet paper was still wadded up really good. So it almost looks like a stone or a granite piece. It's really, really fun. And I love this clay. I love doing the clay this way. I know it takes a long time to dry, but I really honestly think it's so much worth it rather than buying your own clay. I can really see a lot of possibilities in crafting using this as a clay medium. I think I might try it next in some of my IOD molds and see how they turn out. I ended up with a chunk of clay left over, so I'm just squishing it down onto a piece of wax paper, kind of trying to make it as even as possible and create a circle out of it. Then I grabbed this little bowl that I had from the Dollar Tree and I decided to lay that on top. And my idea was to make a little trinket bowl, but I forgot to line the glass with paper. So I thought, I don't think I'm going to be able to pick this off again. And I didn't realize I had done that until after it was dry. So I decided to just go with it. This is what it looks like now that it's completely dry and completely stuck to this little glass bowl. And you know what? I think it looks pretty cool. I'm going to paint it with this gray paint, and I'm only going to need one coat because it covers really, really well. Then I'm going to paint the inside of the bowl just up to the edge of where the clay is. The inside is going to need two coats, so I just dried it with my blow dryer in between. I added three little rocks to the bottom of the glass bowl, and then I created this little faux tree using some tiny little greenery and a wooden stem and glued that in between. And now I'm just going to be adding some little floral picks and a little bit of other greenery in here. And I just thought this looked so cute, like a little baby terrarium with a little concrete or granite accent on the outside. I think this would also look super cute with some succulents in it. I hope you enjoyed these paper mache and paper clay projects today and got inspired to maybe try this yourself. It's a quick, easy, and cheap way to make beautiful home decor. Don't forget to go down to my description box and click on the link to Sonja's video and check out her channel. And if you haven't subscribed to Sonja's channel yet, I'd love it if you could do that for her too. See you in the next one.